This is Garis, Masculist, MGTOW flyers, that is 2-3 page essays on the themes of masculism and MGTOW, written by and read aloud by Prof. Dr. Hugo de Garis. This is flyer number 724, entitled The Biconscious Masculist Crushing of Monoconscious Feminist Ingratitude. Description. Men who know no masculist ideas are still resentful towards monoconscious feminists who trash men, who show no gratitude towards men, despite men giving women so much. The same is true of biconscious masculists who, however, have their resentment strongly reinforced by their biconscious masculist anger at monoconscious feminists for these women's profound hypocrisy. For example, in brackets, when monoconscious feminists lash out at men in public for the ways that men oppress women, whereas masculists, with their biconscious knowledge that women oppress men far worse, are a lot angrier, since their resentment is strongly reinforced by their feelings of rage against monoconscious feminist hypocrisy towards men. Close brackets. This combined biconscious masculist resentment at feminazi ingratitude towards men and their rage at monoconscious feminist hypocrisy makes biconscious masculists violently angry at monoconscious feminists, treating them as the enemy, aiming to wipe them out by totally neglecting them, forcing them into a slow, miserable death, rotting on the shelf. Now the flyer itself. The Biconscious Masculist Crushing of Monoconscious Feminist Ingratitude by Prof. Dr. Hugo de Garis. Email profhugodegaris@yahoo.com. Website profhugodegaris.wordpress.com. When I hear or read about some monoconscious feminist trashing men about something, the masculist, the biconscious masculist in me gets angry. I feel, quote, what an ungrateful monoconscious feminazi bitch. And if she were face to face with me, I would be very verbally violent, ideologically hateful towards her, haranguing her with masculist rhetoric, making it very clear to her that her monoconscious feminist misandry not only screams of hypocrisy, but of massive ingratitude towards the huge support that men give women. Okay, I can put myself as a biconscious masculist into the shoes of a monoconscious feminist who by definition knows nothing about how women oppress men, and far worse than vice versa. If I were such a woman, I'd be angry at men for the ways that men oppress women, for example, rape, sexual harassment, domestic violence, patriarchy, misogyny, etc. If I'd been raped by a man, I'd probably hate all men, thinking that the next man who got close to me physically might want to rape me too. I understand all that, so you could call me a male feminist in that sense. In fact, by definition, a biconscious masculist is both a male masculist and a male feminist. He's familiar with both sets of ideas, that is, masculist and feminist, aware that gender oppression is very much a two-way street, that is, that women oppress men too, and in fact a lot worse than vice versa, since being both a masculist and a feminist, he has a strong basis for comparison. He can compare how much worse, how much more horrible women's gender crimes are against men than vice versa, which is something that a monoconscious feminist cannot do, since by definition a monoconscious feminist is clueless about how women oppress men. The very idea that women gender oppress men at all is totally not on a feminist's radar. One of the most deeply held beliefs of monoconscious feminists is that gender oppression is a one-way street, that men are the oppressors and women are the oppressed. To suggest that women oppress men, and in fact worse than vice versa, is heresy to a monoconscious feminist. After 6 decades of feminist gender political monopoly, for a monoconscious feminist to be told that women oppress men worse, with women's horrible, decades-lasting gender crimes against men, in brackets, for example, the masculist big three, that is, women's manslavery, women's divorce rape, women's forced fathering, close brackets, would usually cause cognitive dissonance in her. Hence the emotionally violent reaction of monoconscious feminists to the idea of allowing a biconscious masculist to attend a feminist talk. In brackets. For example, have a look at my masculist flyer, number 699, entitled, quote, "Denied access as a masculist to a university feminist public talk on reproductive justice," unquote, on my website, which talks about me being blocked by a beefy male bouncer from attending a feminist talk on reproductive justice, where I had intended to tell the audience that women have a lot more reproductive justice than men have, since women have the legislated MARA, that is, maternity rejection right, but men have no legislated PARA, that's paternity rejection right. So millions of women are able to force men into unwanted paternities for decades of their lives, a massive gender crime against men committed by millions of women. Close brackets. The above is a clear example of monoconscious feminist hypocrisy that so enrages biconscious masculists, which is why such men feel real hatred towards such women. Lots of men who know nothing of masculist ideas still feel resentful when they hear monoconscious feminists trashing men. These men think, quote, "Men do a lot for women, so these feminists should be a lot more grateful towards men," end quote. Masculists, biconscious masculists, feel similarly, but their anger is far greater because their masculist resentment is combined and fueled with their biconscious masculist knowledge of the level of monoconscious feminist hypocrisy towards men. This biconscious masculist resentment of monoconscious feminist ingratitude towards men, combined with the burning hatred of their biconscious masculist disgust towards monoconscious feminist hypocrisy, in brackets, when such women trash men publicly for the relatively minor ways that men oppress women, when in reality, as seen by biconscious masculists, that women oppress men far worse, close brackets, makes biconscious masculists explosively angry at monoconscious feminist hypocrisy and ingratitude. So biconscious masculists are much less likely than unmasculisted men, in brackets, blue pill men, who know nothing about masculist nor MGTOW gender politics, close brackets, to just quietly, passively walk away from public trashing of men by biconscious feminists. This combination of resentment and anger on the part of the biconscious masculists makes them a lot more likely to harangue a monoconscious feminist who trashes men publicly. He'll probably say such things to her as, quote, "Go fuck yourself, you hated misandrist, male-dumping, feminazi cunt. Go fuck yourself, literally, because we men, we masculisted men, won't. That's your punishment. You women oppress men far worse with your manslavery, your divorce rape, your forced fathering, etc. Learn some masculism, you hypocritical feminazi shit. Learn that gender oppression is a two-way street and that you women oppress men worse. Men's oppression of women is rather minor compared to the horrible, decades-lasting gender crimes that women commit against men, making you monoconscious feminazis look utter hypocrites to biconscious masculists, who are familiar with both sets of ideas, feminist and masculist. If you monoconscious feminists don't learn some masculism, in brackets, and by definition become biconscious, close brackets, faster than the man in your life, if you have one, then if he is biconscious and you are monoconscious, then he will become disgusted by your monoconscious misandrist hypocrisy and will dump your ass. As men, as masculistic men, we piss on your ingratitude towards men who do so much for women. Speaking bluntly, you women evolved to be fuckholes, baby factories, and child raisers. You did not evolve to understand and manipulate the world. You women have always been parasites of men. It's men who build cultures, and it's you women who parasite off them. As men, we only tolerate you women because of your two traditional monopolies of vagina and womb. The only real attraction you women have for men are your vaginas. If you take away the sex, the great glue between the sexes, then most men would probably quickly ignore women, treating women as as alien inferiors who are irrational, emotional, hysterical, who can't build anything, invent anything, create anything. You women are so fucking useless. Look around you. Look at all this construction, the room you are in, the machines, the inventions, the tech, all invented and built by men that you women parasite off. If men were as passive and useless as you women in confronting the world, we would still be living in caves, and probably not even that, since it took male guts to explore caves that maybe had bears in them. You women have won a pathetic 3% of science Nobel Prizes. You lack genius. There are no female Beethovens, Einsteins, Kants. Your brains are 10% smaller than men's. You women are dumber than men by 4 IQ points on average. Your IQ variance is 10% smaller than men's, so over a whole population, women's IQ scores are more bunched up, and men's scores more spread out, so that the morons and the genii are males. Since the genii are males, it's not surprising that only 3% of science Nobel Prizes have been won by women. Women's testosterone levels are 20 times lower than men's, so women are hugely less aggressive, less ambitious, less dogged, less persistent, so give up a lot more easily when the going gets tough. So it's not surprising that it's men who accomplish nearly everything. Look at survivalist experiments, where a bunch of women are put on an isolated island and left to fend for themselves. After a week, they had to be rescued, otherwise they would have faced dangerous medical risks, whereas a bunch of men thrived, setting up adequate shelters and catching sufficient quantities of food. When the two groups were placed on the same island, the women quickly moved to the male camp to survive. You women are fucking useless, yet you trash men, you hated, hypocritical, feminazi cunts, you ungrateful, misandrist shits. Go fuck yourselves, because we won't. Learn some masculism, become biconscious, and learn to be a lot nicer to men, to be a lot more grateful towards men for keeping you alive, to be a lot more, or we masculists will punish you so severely that we will effectively exterminate you by totally ignoring you, forcing you to die slow, miserable deaths, rotting on the shelf, manless, loveless, sexless, babyless, and spat at, utterly rejected socially and sexually by men, masculistic men, who, in a few years, given the rate at which masculist and MGTOW ideas are spreading on the internet, will be most men. It's in your self-interest to learn some masculism, to become biconscious, since then you will lose your monoconscious feminist anger at men for the ways that men oppress women, by having it cancelled, by your female masculinist anger at women for the far worse ways that women oppress men, in brackets, for example, the big three. By losing your monoconscious feminist anger at men, you will become a lot nicer for men to be with, and hence you will be more likely to have and to keep a boyfriend. If you remain monoconscious feminists, in a few years, nearly all the men that you come across will have been masculisted, infected by the masculist virus, who will spit in your face, making your life miserable, seeing you as a misandrous, male-dumping, hypocritical, feminazi cunt, and will effectively exterminate you by totally rejecting you, causing millions of monoconscious feminists to eventually commit suicide or be forced to become biconscious in order to survive. Hence the large and rapidly growing number of female masculists on the internet now, who are sprouting masculist and MGTOW ideas, which they do not have the brains to invent themselves. So they rehash masculist and MGTOW ideas that men had been pushing on the internet for a decade or more. So, learn some gratitude towards men for what men do for you women, or we will exterminate you. Men don't want relationships with misandrous, male-dumping, feminazi, hypocritical cunts, leaving them to rot on the shelf, totally ignored, not even pumped and dumped, dying slow, miserable deaths. In short, you women need to be grateful to men or die. End quote. Cheers. Prof. Dr. Hugo de Garis. Email Prof.